very good afternoon to you. Welcome very specially. It's Hard Facts, and it's today being Tuesday, 23rd of July, 2024. Seem to be losing track of my time there, but don't worry, I'm all back. Yes, indeed. Good to have you here. Thank you for staying with 95.1 Nigeria Info. Thank you for engaging in the conversations. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, your opinions, and all of that. And I promise you more of that is going to continue here on your number one talk station, where we keep it passionate, trustworthy, and conversational. My name is Somi. That's S-O-M-I, short for Apena Somi. And as usual, we like to take you on the roundtable conversations for about an hour and a half, thereabouts, after which we'll get into our conversation for the day and see what is happening with you, where we get to take your thoughts and contributions on all things around your area. That's, in summary, what we have for you on the show today. I already gave a little bit of a sneak peek into our conversation for the 5 o'clock hour. But before that, the roundtable is kicking off officially, and I have with me in the studio today a guest who is going to be joining me to take on the matters of our dearest beloved country, Nigeria. Barrister Shedrach, Bako, thank you for joining me in the studio today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yes, indeed.
Good afternoon, I guess. Or
good afternoon. We're still afternoon.
To listeners out there. Thank you so much. It's
all right,
pleasure.
then. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's get straight into the conversations. First story in the news is that concerning the interest rate. We have an update that CBN has raised interest rate to 27.65%. Some would say this is not surprising news, given that everything in the economy seems to be pointing towards a certain trajectory, and the approach of government, or some would say their monetary policy direction, usually sees them trying to bring up these measures to manage what's happening in the economy. And so some had projected that they were going to continue to raise the interest rate. And here we have it. The MPC, which is the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank, has increased the benchmark lending rate to 27.65%. Apparently the hike in this was disclosed, the hike in the MPR was disclosed by the governor of the CBN, Olayemi Cardoso, at the end of a 296th MPC meeting in Abuja today. The Monetary Policy Committee had maintained this stance to tame inflation since it resumed meeting this year, and thus far it has hiked the rate by more than 500 points. The rate was raised to 26.25% in May, and here we are at 27.65% from their last meeting. However, with inflation moving to 34.19% in June, according to the National Bureau of Statistics, headline inflation increased by 0.25% relative to the May 2024 headline inflation rate, which was at 33.95%. Of course, you have the year-on-year basis, which has also increased marginally. And, with all of this, the CBN governor has maintained that the Monetary Policy Committee members were committed to price stability and were willing to keep tightening until inflation is tamed. This is an interesting headline, and the position that they're taking as well, especially since some have projected that inflation is projected to continue to rise, and so we are seeing a situation where inflation is rising. They're trying to tame it with this policy, and it keeps rising. Perhaps some would say try a different strategy, or is this really the way out of it? Let's get your thoughts on this, sir.
Let me say again, like you mentioned earlier on, it's not surprising that the CBN has toed this line. Attempts have been made several times to try to tame inflation. Unfortunately, the tighter the CBN policy had become, it would seem that the more inflation would be on the rise. So, in my view, it just says that that isn't the direction to go. I think so. Of course, the policy framework, policy makers would have studied economics in school. They've been told if inflation is rising, then the interest rate has to rise so it will be able to tame inflation. But the Nigerian economy seems to be defying that logic. Therefore, I would have thought that, look, you just sit back and make a review of the policies you've made and how far you've achieved or been able to attain what the goal you set out to attain. But as it seems, this goal has not been attained. And I don't see why we should continue on this trajectory. So I think that, in my view, even though I don't have a ready-made answer to that, but in my view, I think that isn't the direction to go. That is in the direction to look at. Again, if you have ever taken any form of loan from the bank, you would understand what this policy means to you. So imagine that investors or manufacturers had gone to the bank to take loans. They've been given at particular interest, and somewhere along the line, interest changes. Okay, and this has happened to several people. Interest just keep changing over time, such that you end up paying the principal sum and yet get stuck in paying interest, because over time the interest rates have changed, and it continues to defy logic. So in my view, this shouldn't be the direction. I think the CBN and other policymakers should sit back and take a look at this and make an assessment of how far they've gone with these policies. But it would seem that it isn't working.
Okay.
That's just the obvious thing.
All right, then. I know I kind of took you off your field there a little bit, being like a barrister and all, but, sometimes just weighing in on these things is basically a case of what the average Nigerian understands by it and the effect it's going to have on them.
Exactly.
Luckily, I have an economist who's going to be coming in later on in the day to talk policy and all of that. But, just to put that out there, that's a major headline that has made the news in the last hour or so. And then let's see if I can bring this back home. We've had talks about an impending protest, and then we've had different people respond to it. Yesterday, the Commissioner of Police, Abuja, came out to give his reasons as to why he thought people shouldn't participate in the protest. And, we've had reactions to that. Now we're having the Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, coming out to warn against what he termed as violence under guise of replicating the protest that shook Kenya. This is what he has come out to say. Now, we know that following some policies that aggrieved Kenyans, which aggrieved Kenyans considered as anti-masses, young people trooped to the parliament and strategic places across Kenya last month. And this protest led to some reforms, including a cabinet reshuffle, right? The talks have come out, I think when they started mobilizing even before what happened in Kenya really shook Kenya, really. But Kenya just seems to be the hope, rather the model that a lot of people are looking at, because they did get some response from the government. They got reforms that included a cabinet reshuffle, a lot of things that had to do with cutting down on the cost of governance and all of that. And so some Nigerians have said, okay, it's not out of place. Let's do this. I've had conversations with people to say, look, yes, constitutionally, everybody is within their right to do so. And at the same time, while it is key, let's look at lessons in the past, what we can learn from those lessons, and see if really this is, you want to get the Kenyan result. If you want to get the Kenyan result, what would be the ideal thing to do beyond just hitting the streets? Had that conversation multiple times, right? And people have had various responses to it. But from everything that has been happening, especially in the build-up to this protest, we are seeing a clear message coming from the security forces trying to ward people against this protest. Let's speak from a legal point of view, Barrister Bako. What are the implications of this, especially seeing that we're having the CP, the IG, all of them coming out to say, don't try this. Don't try this. What are the implications?
All right. Well, so foremost, I think an attempt to stifle that protest from happening, it's wrong legally, because again, by constitutional rights, everyone has a right to participate in such protests, as it were, as long as it is not violent, as long as it is not destructive. We have been empowered to so do. And when I say we, I mean Nigerians generally have been empowered to so do. There are days that policies do not go your way. There are days that certain things within the nation are not pleasing to you. It's within your constitutional right to be able to come out and lend your voice. We have this freedom of speech, we have this freedom of movement, and so on. So if you combine those who are behind this protest have a right to march around streets and protest to show the government their grievances. So that's from the legal perspective, and I'm trying to be as simple as possible so that everybody out there can understand what I'm trying to say. But if you ask me about the protest, I think it's failed from its inception, because when you look at historically, everywhere there's been a protest, all right, like that of Kenya that we're using in recent times, it's always been quiet, it's always been spontaneous. And when I say quiet, I mean it was never on the media, it was never announced, the dates were not announced. It just more or less like at the spur of the moment sprang up and overwhelmed even the security apparatuses of whatever state or whatever government. So the fact that this has been building up over time, to me, seems to be heading towards failure. But on the flip side, I think that even though it seems to be going in the direction of failure, but the security agencies of Nigeria are, from their comments or from comments that have been made, from statements made on the press by the IG, by the Commissioner of Police, they seem to be daring those who want to go on this protest. They seem to be pointing fingers. All right?
Sports after this.
So just hold that thought, sir. We're going to come back to this.
All right.
Introducing the first of its kind in Nigeria.
The first radio just for kids. It's here at 101.7 Kids FM Lagos.
Are you serious?
Oh, yes.
It's going to be fun for kids.
Connection established.
Thank you for staying with us. We are back from that really short break, and I'll just let Barrister Shedrach Bako get back to his line of thought regarding the statements coming from the security forces regarding the protest.
All right. So just like I was saying, I said I was pointing to the fact that statements that have been made by the security apparatuses of the country seem to be daring the youths or those who are behind this protest. And I think, you see, as
is it
humans,
a daring or is it a cautionary?
From the way it's been spoken. It's like we dare you to do this because, again, lives will be lost, or some persons will suffer for attempting to question the government or bring the government to question. So I think it's more like a dare rather than an appeal to forestall anything from happening. And those who mount our security apparatuses, as it were, know so well that every individual has a right and the ability, or every individual has the right to be able to protest, because protesting isn't necessarily violent, except, of course, in the course of it, some agitations or persons get agitated and then become violent. All right? So I think they are daring. I think they should be cautious too in the way that they make statements regarding those who have made up their minds to go out to protest. That's my thought on this.
Okay, to their credit, there was some form of caution, I believe, in the choice of words. Perhaps the thing that one would take them to task on are the reasons why they stated why people shouldn't hit the street. So, for example, the CP, Bennett Igwe of Abuja here, was actually, he was pleading somewhat, says, please, it's so important that you don't come and do this. The reason he gave, though, was that they have security operatives in Abuja have worked very hard to ensure that the lives and safety of Abuja residents have been protected, and so this would be the payment. Them not hitting the streets would be the payment for that. And then you have the IG himself, who was saying that the force's decision, guiding why he would come out and make such a statement, was based on what happened during the last EndSARS protest nationwide.
All right.
He insisted that the police particularly had not been relieved of the trauma that they passed through. So he said the protest was, perhaps the protest and the resultant effect were traumatic for the security forces.
Yeah.
And that's why he's coming out to say this. And then he also, to his credit, he was... And I think this is where we need to probably get some clarity.
Okay.
Where the CP, for example, in Abuja was saying, look, don't come out and protest at all. IG, Egbetokun said, our position is that the proposed violent protests are ill-advised and should be jettisoned fortuitously. So he has already termed
made a conclusion.
Yes, it as being violent. And he went ahead to say that the police have the responsibility to protect properties and everyone, irrespective of their race, color, ethnicity, tribe, who are lawfully embarking on their daily activities.
Okay.
So there's a coloration that has been given to it.
Yeah.
And he concluded by saying, we will therefore not sit back and fold our arms to watch violent activities unleash violence on our peaceful communities or destroy any of our national critical infrastructure and assets again.
All right.
Please, sir, there's something about choice of words.
Yeah.
There's something about when one is using certain terminology.
All right.
So I talked about, let's analyze this from a legal perspective and see if we can make sense of what exactly is being said here.
All right. So, like I pointed out, by law, every Nigerian has the right to do this. Okay?
Whether they are living in Nigeria or not, because that's another one of the things they said. They said they ran background checks on many of the organizers and sponsors of the protest, and they said they found out that many of them are not living in Nigeria and that they are only out to instigate crisis in the country.
Okay. So there's a whole lot of issues surrounding this. The first question is to ask, why are Nigerians outside Nigeria, all right, desirous of doing this? In the first place, why are Nigerians outside of Nigeria? Okay? So there's a whole lot of stress. There's a whole lot of anger from Nigerians generally. I have always been a firm believer in Nigeria, but I can tell you categorically that right now I'm beginning to be doubtful even about the nation called Nigeria. Okay? Now,
how come? That's a very strong statement.
It's a strong statement. It's a strong statement.
Please clarify
and
why.
I'm saying I'm being cautious to say this because, you see, my own generation, I'm in my early 50s, okay? My own generation have lost out as far as Nigeria is concerned. Our parents had the good part. We have come in. We're losing out. We're raising children, and we're hoping that Nigeria will be good for them, okay? I have said several times that this is the best country in the world. We just had rain. It's a privilege to have this rain. There are nations in the world that rarely see rain. Okay? You go out, you see grass growing just freely. There are nations that import grass to plant. So this is a very beautiful country, an exceptionally blessed country. However, we've not been able to manage our resources over the time. And it has built up, it has generated into anger. And I can tell you that the anger of Nigerians is not because of the current government. It's because over time, Nigerians have been promised so much, and so much has been said about how we can become better persons, but incidentally, we haven't grown to where we ought to be growing.
You said over time. Is this including from your time as well?
Yes. And I can say, in the last 40 years, Nigeria has not grown. It's sad to say this. All right? In the last 40 years, Nigeria has not grown. And I ask you, when was electricity discovered? And this is 2024. We're still struggling with electricity. It just baffles any right-thinking human being. Okay? So these are some of the things that have angered Nigerians over time. And like I said, most Nigerians would not have had a need to go out of Nigeria if Nigeria were functioning properly. Most Nigerians wouldn't have thought of that. Okay? But at the moment, they are out of the country. Now, funnily, you know, when the Kenyans protested, the government began to do some pseudo reforms. Okay? Statements were made to the fact that these protests were done because people outside instigated Kenyans to do so. It looks like
people outside being Kenyans,
yes,
outside in diaspora.
Kenyans outside, including Western countries, okay, instigated Kenyans to do so. Now, it just looks like a common commentary across Africa that when particularly African youths, rise up to do anything, our leaders tell us that it is Westerners that are instigating, it is Westerners that are promoting this. And I say, yes, I would want to agree if that is the direction they are going at. But I ask a question, okay? Why have Africans not been able to instigate Westerners, to Western youths to rise up against their government? Because the governments work for the people. The governments work for the people. If Nigeria's government were working for Nigerians, Nigerians will have no need to go out to protest. Nigerians will have no cause to be instigated by foreigners to do any form of protest. But sadly, this isn't our story. Our story is that we have had government after government after government after government who have tended to have failed the nation and have tended to have failed the people. And the people in anger are rising up or seeking to rise up against such failures over time. Now, incidentally, if you ask the youths, what is the solution? Because again, they are attempting to, from what I hear, it's an attempt to show their grievances. So when you show your grievance, what are you going to say to the government by way of solution? Okay? It is not enough to go out and protest. But I think it is best that when you protest, you go out with a solution to say, okay, like the End SARS movement. The End SARS movement wanted to end SARS. Okay? That was, in quote, a solution, some level of provision of some solution. And almost immediately, SARS was withdrawn. But the brutality from those men who used to be called SARS didn't end. I don't know if you get my point. It didn't end. We still have brutality across the nation by security forces, whether the army, the police, navy, whosoever, because once they are dressed in uniform, they have a mentality that they have greater rights than other Nigerians. And Nigerians are in pain, they are in bitterness. So I think that is why most people have been advocating for this protest. Incidentally, like I said from the onset, I don't think it will work.
Okay. All right. So you addressed the comments about from the IGP about, why Nigerians are doing it. You touched a little bit on, whether it is a function of people outside mobilizing or not. Does that make any difference, really? Whether they're mobilizing from outside? You did say that it's some sort of a general statement, and some would say, okay, that's one thing that people will use, but does it matter or not?
It doesn't. It's some form of propaganda, but I say it doesn't.
Okay.
It doesn't because, you see, like I said and I pointed out, Nigerians have no reason to live outside of this country.
If our resources are
If our resources were well utilized.
Okay. All right then.
All right? Those outside that you claim are instigating is because they've gone out, they've seen things work. There are some basic amenities of life that you do not struggle for outside of this country, particularly in the western part of the world. All right? electricity, I do not know, but I want to believe that even this station now runs not on electricity provided by Power Holding, but by some form of generator, or if you have some solar system. All right? So this, but in some climes, this is taken for granted. You just wake up and realize everywhere is lit up. There's light 24/7. But you cannot proudly say that regarding Nigeria. And, surprisingly, monies have been spent over years with the claim of generating electricity, but we've not seen electricity generated.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, very quickly, let me take this comment because, you made reference to electricity provision and all of that. Joseph Jojo Cash says, very sweet. I'm watching you guys from another country where there's light since I came here. I never hear up NEPA. But the sad thing is that I'm coming back to Nigeria next week. It's really sad. Now, yes, really, this conversation around protests have taken front burner for like a week or two thereabout now.
Yeah.
Is there any other way? I mean, especially if you're touting that it's going to be largely unsuccessful.
Yeah.
Is there any other way? And that still remains to be seen. The biggest fear now, I think, is that when there are so many calls, especially by security forces, for people not to even come out, whether you like it or not, is going to hamper the number of people that did intend to come out, no matter what their grievances were,
sure.
and no matter what it is that they wanted to fight for and all of
Sure.
that. There is that effect that is going to have. And so let's put the protest aside and discuss.
All right.
What are the options available to Nigerians legally to be able to push for these things that they're asking for and get it?
So this is a very tough question. All right, a very tough question in the sense that we need a total reform of our system. Okay, we do not have a working system. That's the truth.
Let's understand when you say system. Are we talking political system? Are we talking the entire social system? What are we talking about?
I'm talking about every system, including religion. Incidentally, including religion. We do not have a working system. Okay? And we need to come to a point where we sit as a nation to first decide and determine what system we want to run by. What goal do we pursue as a nation? What is the vision? What is the dream of this nation? When our founding fathers fought for independence, what was uppermost in their minds? All right? That's what we need to go back to begin to ask. When we started Nigeria, or when Nigeria began, we started with some form of regional governments. And at some point, certain persons thought, running regional government was counterproductive. It was going to keep us competing against each other, and it wasn't healthy to do that. Then we changed. We came to some form of system where everybody operated based on majority and so on and so forth. What we call the presidential system as against the parliamentary kind of system that we used to have. Okay? We've been running the presidential system for years. And each and every year, this system has continued to be as more expensive as the last system or the last time we attempted to run a presidential system. So we've borrowed the presidential system. We're not running it effectively, because if you look at where we borrowed it from and look at how they are running their system, you understand that they understand that people are at the base, at the bedrock of every power. Every form of power that exists because some people have come together to hand it over to certain persons. But this is not what is operational in Nigeria. In Nigeria at the moment, okay, we're living as if we're in a jungle where it's the survival of the fittest. By whatever means you gain power, gain it. That is what we operate as a people. By whatever means. Now, if we continue to run that system, we will run aground, and we're running aground even pretty faster than we ever imagined. What do we want to... You've heard the American dream. What is the Nigerian dream? You just wake up in the morning. If your parents are fortunate to send you to a place called school, you go to school, you come back, you play football with your friends, you keep doing that until the day you grow old, or you graduate from university and then you have an uncle somewhere who, even though there is no job specification or job requirement, because he exists in an office, he will create a table, a desk, and a chair for you to come sit down and take salary, even though you do not work. All right? How do we run a system such as that? How do we run a system such as that? We borrowed this presidential system from the US. At the moment, the US has a policing system that has to do from as low as what we call local government. So look, each local government has some form of security apparatus. Then you go to the next, which is the state. Then you go to the federal system that has its own kind of police. We've been agitating as a nation over years for state policing. We have used the same argument year in, year out to defeat the argument for a state police. Even though we know that the advantages of having a state police are far greater than not having a state police, but we've used the same argument to defeat that proposition every time. In fact, it has become a political slogan to talk about state police. So what system do we want to run as far as our security is concerned? At the moment, whether we admit it or not, our security system has failed. Failed in the sense that we still have people being kidnapped day in, day out, even within the FCT. And I commend the Commissioner of Police of the FCT. He's done so well. I've followed some of his activities. He's done so well. But you know what? The responsibility and the tax far outweighs one man, far outweighs one unit, far outweighs one command. And for as long as we do not have a reform, we will continue to have the kind of challenges that we still have even at the moment. So these are the things I keep talking about, or I'm talking about when I talk about sitting down to agree that we have a running system and say, by this system shall we run, and by this system shall we achieve the goals that we have ahead of us.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's see if we can take some contributions and thoughts from people before we go into the next story that we have. We're streaming on Facebook and YouTube. I've had some people send in messages. Please let me know, for those of you who were experiencing difficulty hearing me with the audio, I've tried to see what I can do about it. Kindly confirm if that has been resolved. Otherwise, let me know so I get my engineers on it. I'm currently doing the radio version of Running Blind, which is, without my headphones, but I need them on. Please let me know if the situation has been resolved so I know if it's the headphones that are the issue or not, okay? Let's see. And before I get to these comments, please, let's make this clear. We did share the headline about what the IG said about protests, and the idea behind it was to basically break down what he said and try to understand it, right? If I were to go by what he said, he spoke against violent protest. He did not speak against protest. That's why I was asking Barrister to interpret it for me.
Exactly.
So that legally speaking, we'll understand what the implications are. He spoke against violent protest. Not against protest, and he gave his reasons. He said the police have not recovered from the trauma of the previous one. So when you're commenting or when you're sending your messages, please address the issue. And I tried by breaking it down so that we understand what the issues are here before we get into the commenting, just so that we can make progress and get into other stories on the roundtable today. Okay, let's see. Who do we have here on Facebook? People who are hungry are still enduring it, and you are bringing protests. Let's destroy the country and perish. Ebere Chibuzo with this one here. What are you saying? That we should continue to endure it? Let's understand what your message is very clearly. Let me go over to what is WhatsApp now, okay? The protest may fail if it fails to address the issue of the 1999 Constitution. Wale Fatula with this one, and he goes ahead to itemize some of the issues. He says, separate the office of the Attorney General from the Minister of Justice. Number 2, strengthen national and state assemblies. Number 3, reform the judiciary. Number 4, electoral reforms. Number 5, INEC leadership. He says, achieve this, and Nigeria is on the path of progress. You can't get someone who bought his way to power to be accountable to you. And then he goes ahead to say, your guest is talking as if he's not from Nigeria. Why are you talking like this? Bros, when it will get better? The Bible says the kingdom of God suffers violence and violence takes it by force. So what exactly are you saying here? Because you went ahead to agree to at least one thing that the barrister had said, which is certain. What is the goal, right? Are you just hitting the streets just to hit the streets? And he made reference to the NSARS instance where there was a targeted goal to it. And just to add to that, I believe some demand, I think it was a 5-point demand listed out. Now, as to whether it
started as a 7-point demand, then narrowed down to 5. Came down to 5.
Now, as to whether they were able to achieve what those demands were in its entirety is another conversation to be had. But you have gone ahead to still set an agenda for this, and you are still coming at my guest for talk. Please, what was your? Let me have Barrister respond to it.
All right. So you see. Nigeria must change. Nigeria must change. The means by which we have to get it to change is, again, I think, agreeing with the IG is not by violent protest, even though you know the English saying that says the hungry man is an angry man. Okay? So tendencies are that in protesting, some persons who are hungry may become violent. Okay? And God forbids that. God forbids that. But I've also pointed out that I think that the protest will not work because I haven't heard an agenda for the protest. Okay? Some people have said, we just want to protest. We just want to show the government we are angry. Angry about what?
That one is clear. Okay. If it's as to why the people are angry, yes. We've had people say the state of things in the country is not favorable, exactly. High cost of living.
Exactly.
Yes, so as to why they are protesting, but what do they want to achieve?
How do you want to achieve that? Okay? How do you want a government and a government you think has failed, how do you want it to reverse itself? That's my thought. That's my logic. How do you want, someone has just mentioned, and I don't want to use that word, all right, how the current government got into office. How do you, if you think that the government isn't doing well, what are you proposing to the government to do when you go on protest as against ventilating?
Well, Wale has said, address the issues of the 1999 Constitution.
Okay. Which I tend to agree with, okay? Because again, the 1999 Constitution, I've read through back and forth, is fraught with all sorts of loopholes. All sorts of loopholes.
Okay, let's take some phone calls.
Yeah.
Hello? 07009510000 or 08095974869 on WhatsApp 08099930137. Let's talk. Hello? Hello, can you hear me? Okay, that one is connecting. Hello?
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, welcome.
Yes, my name is Jamilu Kole from Utaku.
Welcome.
Your guest is a wonderful person. We hear a lot from him. Welcome, sir. Thank you. You see, we are not saying people should not protest, but we have to consider what the IG and the CP of FCC said. We are closer to the masses and the grassroots. There are a lot of youth that are just waiting for people to start striking for them to come and loot. So we have to make sure that those people are being guided, because the strike does not have focus. Who will start it and then who will end it? Because putting people on the street is easier, but how can you return them back to their home? And how can you differentiate between the looters and the real protesters? That is where we are finding it difficult. We know that some policies of government are not masses friendly, but there is a lot of ways to make sure that the government do the needful. But for you to come and destroy innocent traders that who sweat to gather their money and to provide goods and services, we not destroy them. But are we bringing ourselves back or are we bringing ourselves forward?
Okay.
So that is my concern. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, welcome.
May God bless you. My name is Sined. I'm calling from Nassau.
All right, go ahead.
May God bless our guests. You see, in the country we are today, we are Nigerians, all of us. You see, I want to advise government. Let government guide the protesters. Why? Because you can't beat somebody and tell him not to cry. My brothers and sisters, if things now don't go out of hand, what government will do, the special idea of general, is to guide the protesters. Why? Because nothing is working in this country today. As a family, you cannot be able to feed your family. Children, they are not that. A meal of garri is 18 naira. Today is 1,000 pounds. You cannot feed your family.
Okay.
Food is not working. Nothing is working. The protest is by force. Youth will take whatever belongs to them. Thank you.
All right, then. Thank you very, very much. All right, we need to go on a quick commercial break. So the most I can do right now is read messages before that. The conversation will definitely continue right after. So let's see if I can quickly do that. Good afternoon, presenter and barrister. If the IGP does not support violent protests, let him provide adequate security for the protesters. He should advise his men not to attack the protesters. Hence, black leaders don't make corrections without hard actions. My name is Agato. I'm not quite sure what that last part was about, but let's see. One more message. Belachianovic from Maitama concerning the protest. Nigerians are always addressing simple challenges with impossible means. He said, for example, addressing food scarcity. Do you increase the price of food? The executive should resign if they can't pay their aides, the minimum wage they set for the populace. That's a completely different conversation, but we'll continue after this.
The Nationals is coming. August 12th.